Hello and welcome to Low Budget Gaming and welcome to another Fast Descendant video. A comment I've been getting recently is regarding reactors, and people want me to make a video going over the reactors that you need for all the descendants in the game. Now over here I have pretty much all the reactors you will ever need for any descendant. Of course there are variations and you can come up with different builds, but this is all you will need for all 20 people. In fact, I have some extras here just to give you other options as well. So even this is more than what you need. Now, I have made a complete guide to reactors a couple of months ago where I went over every different aspect of the reactor, like how to farm them, how to enhance them, what options you need, which descendant needs what, how to implant a gun on a reactor, things like that. So if you want more detail, you can check that video. I have covered all the descendants in there as well. But this one is just going to be what reactor you need for what descendant. I have made builds for all 19 of them, and I have about 3 builds in mind for NELL when she launches with her Transcendent mods in Season 3. So what I'll do is first I'll just give you a brief idea of what to look for when you are looking for a reactor for a Descendant. I have prepared this cheat sheet yesterday. I have shared it in the community tab already. But basically I want to explain what you're looking for in a reactor. And if you understand this, you will basically be able to find it yourself. So in this game, we have descendants with a high skill critical hit rate, people with 15% or 20% base skill critical hit rate, and then you have people with low skill critical hit rate, people with 5%, maybe 10%. Okay, so that is like the one way of splitting them. And then what you need is the options on the reactor to give you the most power. So I have 3 types of reactors here. The best in slot, which will give you the maximum power. The ideal one, which is the one that we actually use because we need cooldown on them, so we put cooldown as one of the options. And then will do for now is like if you have this is good enough, you can hunt for the better one, but for now you can use this. So this will do for now category is something that I would say early on you can use, but don't fully enhance it because you may get the better one while playing the game. So I have 2 descendants here, the 2 hound descendants, INES and KEELAN. INES on the left, KEELAN on the right. INES is electric type, and she uses tech arcade type when we use the Time of the Hunting Hounds Transcendent mod. KEELAN has low crit, and KEELAN is toxic and singular type. He has fusion as well, but his damage dealing skills are singular. So that is how you first pick the reactor. You want electric and tech for INES, toxic and singular for KEELAN. Now, because INES is crit, high crit descendant, one of the options that gives the most power is skill critical hit damage. That is the option giving you the most power. So that will be the first one you want. The second option in terms of power is tech power boost ratio. Now we pick tech's power boost ratio over electric power boost ratio simply because with electric we can increase the power using mods. However, the mods for the arcade type do not increase the power, they increase the modifier. So the reactor is the only place where we can get some more of the arcade power, arcade type power boost. So this is why between the element and the archetype is preferred. Same for KEELAN, toxic and singular we put because he doesn't have singular, but between toxic and singular, singular will be our preferred option. So if you look at the ideal reactor, we want skill critical hit damage giving us the most power, and then we go with cooldown. We skip the arcade power boost because we want the cooldown. And over on the side of KEELAN, right side, we have singular power boost ratio, the arcade type, because we are not using crit, and then we want cooldown. So this middle reactor is the one that we use most often because we want the cooldowns to be low so that we can use our skills frequently. And then in the final category, the will do for now. For INES, if you can get electric or tech with cooldown, that will be good. If for KEELAN you get toxic and cooldown, that will also work. But like I said, the ideal one is the one in the middle. You can use the one at the bottom at the start and maybe enhance it by 2 levels. But once you find the ideal reactor, then you put all your resources into fully enhancing that and implanting the right guns and things like that. So that is the one that we will be using most often. Okay, so you can take a screenshot if you want it. And now let's go into each of the descendants. All right, now let's get into the descendants and who needs what. I'll try and keep this as short as possible, so I won't go into too much details into the various builds and stuff. So I'll only focus on like a popular build, and mostly for mobbing, I'll mention the Colossus options in some cases. So let's start alphabetically. We'll start with AJAX. AJAX is non-attribute and tech. Low crit, so we want these ones, the materialized mechanics reactor, non-attribute and tech, and we want tech skill power boost ratio, skill cooldown. You can have the tactical rifle mounting that will give you extra damage with the pest control of the secret gun. So that is for Ajax. Next we have BLAIR. Now BLAIR has high crit damage, crit rate, crit damage, and BLAIR uses fire and dimension to do the damage. So this is the reactor that you would use for BLAIR. Burning phase reactor, fire and dimension, skill critical hit damage, and skill cooldown. Now if you're using BLAIR for bossing with the Colossus, you can use something like this. Additional skill attack when attacking Colossus and skill cooldown, same reactor. You can also just use the normal reactor because that is good enough. Crit damage does a lot of damage. With this one, you can add arcade tuning things and stuff like that to increase a little bit of the Colossus damage. So that's why we have this option, but this will also do fine against the normal Colossus. Then we have Bunny. Now Bunny, we prefer using the singular. Again, you can use the fusion archetype as well. There are different, but I've always used the singular one most of the time. Bunny doesn't need a lot of cooldown. So the ideal setup will be this one here, tingling singularity reactor, electric and singular, and on the options we want singular, skill power boost ratio, and skill cooldown. However, like I said, you don't really need a lot of cooldown on Bunny. You only want the third skill to have more duration than the cooldown. So if the cooldown is lower than the duration, you can actually avoid using cooldown on the reactor, and then you can go with the best in slot for Bunny, which would be singular and electric. All right, next we have ENZO. Now ENZO is a gun-based descendant, so you basically don't really need to have the right reactor. You can do a lot of damage. What you want is cooldown and duration on the reactor. It can be any type as long as you have cooldown and duration. So, but if you can get this one here, materialized singularity reactor, you can use something like this. The options at the bottom, cooldown, duration up, and skill cooldown. Those are the two important things that you want on ENZO. All right, next we have ESIEMO. Now ESIEMO is a fire type descendant. ESIEMO uses tech skills and fusion skills. ESIEMO also has low crit. So what we have is the burning mechanics reactor, fire and tech skill power boost ratio, skill cooldown. His first and third abilities are tech, second and fourth are fusion. The fourth ability, which is the ultimate where he just runs around and explores, that uses fusion. So you can, if you are making a build with just the fourth ability, you can use this one here, burning mixture reactor, fire and fusion, fusion skill power boost ratio, skill cooldown. I prefer using this one, it's more fun. All right, next up we have FREYNA over here. FREYNA has low crit at 5%. FREYNA uses toxic skills and tech attribute. So the ideal reactor for her will be tech, toxic mechanics reactor, so toxic and tech skill power boost ratio, and skill cooldown. That is the option. Now, if you don't spam her abilities too much and cooldown is not that important, or you're getting cooldown from arcade tuning in other places, then the best in slot for her will be toxic skill power and tech skill power. Okay, but you'll have a lower cooldown on your abilities, and you can also use skill cooldown and skill duration up as well. So you'll have longer duration on your puddles and things like that, and you'll still have the cooldown because again, she doesn't need that much power. She's very strong as it is. So yeah, so these are the options, but I would prefer tech, skill power, boost ratio, and cooldown as the main reactor. Next we have GLEY. Now GLEY is another gun-based descendant. She has explosive life build for skill and stuff. But once again, with GLEY, what we are looking for with the Predator Instinct is to increase the duration on a third ability and make it more than the cooldown. So once again, this thing here, materialized singularity reactor. Again, you don't have to match it. You just want the cooldown and duration on the reactor. Now, if you are building GLEY for the explosive life or something like that, I haven't used that recently. I do have a build, but I haven't updated it. You would need the dimension instead. So materialized phase reactor, non-attribute dimension. So dimension, skill power boost ratio, and cooldown would be a good reactor to go with that one. Okay, next we have HAILEY. Now HAILEY is a chill descendant. She uses singular skills. So you would go with singular and cooldown. Now keep in mind, HAILEY is also another gun-based Descendant, so it's not really necessary. You can still do just fine with just using the guns. What we are trying to do is reduce the cooldown and increase her MP for her third ability so that she can have the third ability up and get the extra crit damage on the guns. So we are not building her for skill as such. But if you're using the first ability and spamming that a little bit, then you can use singular skill power boost ratio and skill cooldown. Okay, next we have INES. Now INES is another interesting one, electric descendant. She has high crit damage. So the preferred one, the setup with the chime of the hunting hounds transcended mod is crit damage and cooldown with the electric and tech reactor. So this one here, tingling mechanics reactor, electric and tech, skill cooldown, skill critical hit damage. Now she has a second build where we remove the transcended mod and we use her third ability, which will be singular. So first and third are singular by default. And if you're relying on that one, then you need the tingling singularity reactor. But the options on this one are skill cooldown and critical hit damage. Okay, so these are the two for INES. Right, next we have everybody's favorite descendant, JAYBER. Now JAYBER, we want one of these, materialized phase reactor. And what we're looking for is a hand cannon mounting so that we can use the peacemaker. And what I've gone with is cooldown and duration for JAYBER so that his turrets have longer duration and things like that. So the materialized phase reactor, non-attribute and dimension with skill cooldown and skill duration, this is the build I have used for JAYBER. Next is KEELAN. So KEELAN is once again low crit, and KEELAN uses toxic and singular skills. He has a fusion setup as well, but we usually use his second ability. So toxic and singular is the reactor type. Here, this one. And again, we have skill cooldown and singular power boost ratio as the options on the reactor. Next, we have Kyle. Now, Kyle is once again a tech type of descendant, non-attribute and tech. So once again, if you're using him for mobbing, tech skill power boost ratio and skill cooldown will be ideal, and tactical rifle mounting will help with getting the extra pest control. Now, Kyle is actually more useful as a bossing descendant, so you can one-shot the Colossus in the game if you have the right build for Kyle. So for that, what we need is a materialized mechanics reactor, same non-attribute and tech, but we want additional skill attack when attacking Colossus. And since we are one-shotting the boss, we don't need the cooldown. We go with tech skill power boost ratio for additional power. And once again, we want the tactical rifle mounting so that we can get a little more power with the pest control. So these two are again useful. Notice this one has been useful for AJAX as well. This might also be handy for NELL later. So yeah, these two for Kyle. Next we have LEPIC. Now LEPIC is a fire descendant, fire and tech, and LEPIC has high crit. So for LEPIC we go with this one, burning mechanics reactor, fire and tech, and the options we want is skill cooldown and skill critical hit damage with the tactical rifle mounting for the secret garden. You can see this one is for ESIEMO. ESIEMO doesn't have crit, so we go with the normal tech. LEPIC has crit, so we go with crit damage. All right, next we have Luna. Now with Luna, you don't really need cooldown if you can hit the nodes properly. So if you don't miss a beat, as it were, you can get away without using any cooldown. So the reactor is materialized singularity reactor. Okay, and this is non-attribute and singular, and we are going with critical hit rate and critical hit damage on the reactor so that we get more damage with our abilities. All three of our abilities will do some damage, crit rate, crit damage, and skill modifier. And so if you are not missing your beats and you are in tune, let's say, with our music, then you will be able to use this one and do the most damage. All right, next up we have SERENA. Now SERENA has two good options. First setup, the more popular setup, doesn't really care about the reactor. We want cooldown and duration on her fourth ability, so it can be any reactor. So you can go with any reactor that has cooldown and duration over here. The other build for SERENA, which is again less used, is the one where she smashes into the ground with the Divine Surge Transcendent module. And Serena is a fire and singular type with that setup, and also she has low crit. So what you would go with is skill cooldown and singular power boost ratio on the burning singularity reactor. You can also use cost and cooldown on this exact reactor just to reduce the cost of her abilities a little bit, because she's flying constantly and stuff like that. So you can just add a little bit of cost reduction, and this will also help with your build. So this would be the normal one, and you can use this as well. All right, next we have SHAREN. Now SHAREN is once again an electric descendant. SHAREN has high crit, so we go with, and she is also using fusion for her skills. So this is the reactor for SHAREN. Tingling mixture reactor, electric and fusion, and you have cooldown and critical hit damage. You can also equip the blue beetle on SHAREN on the reactor, so scout rifle weapon class mounted, because that gives you extra crit damage, crit rate, sorry, if you are using fusion skills. So you can have that as the mounting condition. Next we have VALBY. So VALBY again is an interesting descendant because she can have a crit build, she can have a non-crit build. She's also good against Colossus. So what I used for VALBY with the supply moisture mod, which increases her crit rate for the gun and her skills, is one of these: cooldown and critical hit rate. She gets about 85% crit rate with like just normal build, but adding a little bit here crit rate will take it to about 93% or something, which actually makes a decent difference in void erosion per stage 10 and stuff like that. However, this is with the hand cannon peacemaker mounted, which gives more non-attribute. If you're using the blue beetle to increase the crit rate, then you don't want crit rate over here. You can go with this one, fusion power and cooldown. So you can use this one if you are using the blue beetle to get the extra crit. Okay, so this will be the other option for VALBY. You can also use VALBY against Colossus. So in that case, you go with additional skill attack when attacking Colossus and skill cooldown. This will be without the supply moisture. I suppose you can use the supply moisture as well. Also this one here, you can also use the non-crit setup without the supply moisture with this different transcendent mode. So you can use these three options for VALBY. So cooldown and crit rate if you're using the peacemaker and you want more crit, and with this one cooldown and fusion, and with this one additional skill attack when attacking Colossus, and also this one cooldown and crit damage. So again, if you're going with supply moisture and you want the more crit damage and you're using the blue beetle, then you can use this as well. So these four are for VALBY depending on the situation. Next is ultimate VIESSA. So I say ultimate VIESSA because ultimate VIESSA has the absolute zero transcendent mod, which changes all her abilities to chill and singular. So normal circumstances, she has chill and fusion for her first three abilities. Fourth ability is tech. But with the absolute zero mod, all become chill and singular. VIESSA also has high crit damage. So we go with skill critical hit damage and cooldown. Reactor is frozen singularity, chill skill power, and singular skill power. So that is VIESSA. All right, and finally we have YUJIN. Now I use the proliferating energy build for YUJIN, where it changes one of his abilities and he throws a sort of weak version of FREYNA's Q, which hits enemies, and when they die they explode and do some damage. So you are using a little bit of skill, but with someone like YUJIN I would be using the malevolent and shooting enemies like that, but he can also revive his teammates and things like that. So the reactor I have for YUJIN is this one here: singular skill power boost ratio, skill cooldown. He's also non-attribute, so materialized singularity reactor. So you can have the hand cannon mounting for the peacemaker to get extra non-attribute power. Okay, so those are the 19 descendants in the game right now. We'll briefly talk about NELL. So NELL will either be a non-attribute and fusion based on the transcendent modes, or non-attribute and tech. So over here we have this reactor, materialized mechanics, tech skill power boost ratio, and cooldown. She has low crit, so we'll work with this one. And if you are going with the fusion setup, then we'll have this one, fusion skill power boost ratio and skill cooldown. So these two would be the main ones I would think for NELL. So that is all the Descendants and the reactors that I use. Of course, there'll be some variations depending on whose build you are following. In that case, just follow the reactor that they mentioned. But yeah, this is enough for me and all the reactors I need for all the Descendants and all the characters, including some extra ones that I mentioned, like best in slot for FREYNA and things like that. So hopefully this was useful. Thank you for watching. I need to go and edit this so that it is not a very long video. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.